She thought her mother's belongings were just useless junk. But when Orson came home, his wife's bedroom was completely empty, and his daughter was holding the trash bags. Then he found a photograph with 4 chilling words written on the back. Vesper knows what happened. What was his daughter hiding? And why was someone searching for the same evidence? Stay until the end to discover the truth behind the empty room. If you enjoy family secrets, shocking twists, and emotional stories, subscribe and turn on notifications for more. My name is Orson Valehart, and 6 weeks after my wife Morel died, I still could not bring myself to enter her bedroom without knocking. It was an old habit. 38 years of marriage had taught me that even when a door belonged to both of us, Morel liked to have her own space. Her bedroom was where she read, sorted receipts, wrote notes, and kept things that seemed meaningless to everyone except her. I never called those things junk. My daughter did. Her name is Vesper Valehart. She was 34, successful, organized, and always certain she knew what was best for everyone. After her mother's funeral, Vesper became increasingly involved in the house. At first, I appreciated it. She brought groceries. She handled phone calls. She helped me with insurance paperwork. Then she started making decisions without asking me. By the second week, she had already thrown away several boxes from the garage. I told her to stop. She apologized. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. On a Thursday morning, I left home at 9 to meet the estate attorney at his office across town. Before I left, I stood outside Morel's bedroom and looked at the closed door. I had locked it the night before. I remember doing it. I remember placing the key in the small ceramic bowl beside the kitchen sink. Then I drove away. The meeting lasted longer than expected. By the time I returned, it was almost noon. The front door was unlocked. I knew immediately that something was wrong. Vesper. No answer. I walked down the hallway. Morel's bedroom door was open. I stopped. For several seconds, I simply stared. The room was almost empty. The bed had been stripped. The shelves were bare. The small wooden cabinet beside the window was gone. Her paintings were gone. Her notebooks were gone. Even the chair where she used to sit every evening had disappeared. I stepped inside. My hands began to shake. Morel? I don't know why I said her name. Perhaps because my mind still expected her to answer. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Vesper stood in the hallway. She was wearing a gray coat and holding a black trash bag. I turned toward her. What happened? She looked at the room. Then at me. I cleaned it. Where is everything? I got rid of it. I stared at her. Everything. Most of it. You had no right. She sighed. Dad, she's dead. I could not believe what I was hearing. She was your mother. I know. Then why would you do this? Vesper looked irritated rather than guilty, because keeping all this stuff isn't going to bring her back. I pointed toward the empty shelves. You threw away her notebooks? They were old. Her photographs? Some of them. Her letters. She hesitated. That hesitation frightened me more than anything else. Then she said, I tossed it. She's dead. Why keep useless junk? I felt something inside me break. Not because the room was empty, because my daughter had looked at everything her mother had loved and decided its value ended when Morel's heartbeat stopped. I walked past Vesper and opened the closet. Empty. I checked the drawers. Empty. The wooden box Morel kept beneath the window was gone. That box contained years of handwritten notes. I turned back. Where's the box? I don't remember. You don't remember? Dad, stop.
No.
My voice surprised both of us. I want my wife's things back. Vesper folded her arms. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I stared at her. Then I noticed something on the floor. A photograph. It had been pushed beneath the bed. I picked it up. It showed Morel standing beside Vesper at an art exhibition in Prague. On the back, Morel had written a date. October 14th, 2016. Underneath it were 4 words. Vesper knows what happened. I read the sentence again. Then a third time. Vesper saw the photograph in my hand. Her face changed. Only for a second. But I saw it.
Fear.
Real fear. She stepped toward me. Dad, give me that. I held it tighter. What happened in 2016? Nothing. You're lying. I said nothing happened. She reached for the photograph. I moved away. For the first time in my life, I looked at my daughter and wondered whether I had ever truly known her. Then Vesper's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her face went pale. She rejected the call. A second later, the phone rang again. This time she answered. I could only hear one sentence from the other end. Did you find the records? Vesper looked directly at me. Then she hung up. Neither of us spoke. Because suddenly I understood one thing. She had not emptied Morel's room because she thought the belongings were worthless. She had been looking for something. And whatever that something was, my wife had left a warning behind. The next morning, I drove to Bellwether House, the auction company where Morel had worked for almost 20 years. I had spent the entire night staring at the photograph. Vesper knows what happened. Those 4 words had changed everything. At 7 in the morning, I called my daughter. She did not answer. I called again. Still nothing. So I decided to find someone who might know what Morel had been investigating before she died. Bellwether House was an old brick building near the center of town. Morel used to tell me that she liked working there because every object had a history, even the ones nobody wanted. When I entered the reception area, a woman behind the desk immediately recognized me. Mr. Veilhart? Yes. I'm Tamsin Rook. Morel had mentioned her many times. Tamsin was 47 and worked as a conservator. She had silver-framed glasses, short dark hair, and a habit of studying people before answering them. I was hoping you could help me, I said. Her expression became serious. Is this about Morel? Yes. She led me into a small office and closed the door. I placed the photograph on her desk. The moment she saw the writing on the back, she stopped breathing for a second. You found this in her room? Yes. Who emptied the room? My daughter. Tamsin looked at me. Vesper. Yes. She removed her glasses and rubbed her forehead. Then she finally did it. Did what? Moved the evidence. I leaned forward. What evidence? Tamsin opened a locked cabinet and removed an old auction catalog. She placed it in front of me. The catalog was from 2017. 3 paintings were listed on one page. All 3 had been sold for enormous amounts of money. Beside each painting was Morel's name. She authenticated these, I said. Originally, Tamsin replied. I looked at her. What does that mean? Morel withdrew her certification several months later. Why? Because she discovered the paintings were not originals. My fingers tightened around the catalog. Copies. Very convincing ones. Who replaced them? We never proved that. But Morel knew something. She knew enough to become frightened. I remembered the way my wife had changed during the last years of her life. She stopped discussing work at dinner. She started locking her office drawer. Sometimes, when the phone rang late at night, she would stare at the screen without answering. I had always assumed she was simply tired. Now I wondered how much she had hidden from me. Tamsin turned another page. This happened in 2017. 3 days after the sale, Morel submitted a formal withdrawal. Then why were the paintings still sold? Because someone submitted another document using her name. My mouth went dry. A forged certification? Yes. Did Morel report it? She tried. And Tamsin looked toward the closed door. She stopped. Why? Someone threatened your daughter. I stood up so quickly that the chair moved backward. Vesper. Tamsin nodded. Morel believed someone was using Vesper as leverage. I thought about my daughter, her sudden involvement in the art business, the expensive apartment she bought years ago, the company she started. I had never understood where all that money came from. Did Vesper know about the paintings? She knew something was wrong, but Morel never told me she believed Vesper was involved intentionally. Then why would Vesper empty her room? I don't know. Tamsin reached into the cabinet again. This time, she pulled out an insurance report. I read the name at the top. Vesper Veilhart. My daughter's name. The policy covered 5 paintings. 2 had disappeared from public records. 1 was supposedly destroyed in a warehouse fire. Another had never officially existed. I looked at Tamsin. What am I looking at? Something Morel found before she died. Why was my daughter insured for paintings? She wasn't the owner. Then who was? Tamsin hesitated. We don't know. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was Vesper. I answered immediately. Where are Mom's things? Silence. Then her voice came through. Dad, you shouldn't be at Bellwether House. Why? Because Mom didn't want you to know. Know what? Another pause. Then she whispered, the paintings weren't the real problem. What was? I can't tell you over the phone. Vesper, tell me now. You need to leave that building. The call ended. I lowered the phone slowly. Tamsin watched me. What did she say? I looked at the insurance report. She said the paintings weren't the real problem. Tamsin went completely still. Then she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and took out a single sheet of paper. It contained an address. Your daughter came here 2 weeks ago, she said. What did she want? She asked me where Morel kept her original records. Did you tell her?
No.
Why? Tamsin looked directly into my eyes. Because someone else had already asked me the same question.
Who?
She pushed the paper toward me. At the bottom was a name I had never heard before. Lucien Marr. And beneath it was the address of a storage facility across town. Tamsin spoke quietly. If Vesper moved the contents of Morel's room, I don't think she threw them away. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. For the first time since my wife's funeral, I stopped thinking about what my daughter had destroyed. I started thinking about what she was trying to hide. And before I left Bellwether House, Tamsin gave me one final warning. Mr. Veilhart, if you go to that storage facility, don't go alone. I looked at the address. I had already decided. I was going. The address Tamsin gave me belonged to Northbridge Vaults, a storage facility on the eastern edge of Bellwether. I drove there just after lunch. I told myself I was going to find my wife's belongings. That was all. But somewhere between Bellwether House and Northbridge, I realized I no longer believed Vesper had thrown anything away. She had hidden something. The question was why. Northbridge Vaults was surrounded by warehouses and empty lots. A faded sign hung above the entrance, and several security cameras covered the parking area. Inside, a gray-haired man sat behind the reception desk. Can I help you? My name is Orson Veilhart. I'm looking for a storage unit rented by my daughter, Vesper Veilhart. The man studied me. Which unit? I don't know. He frowned. Then I can't give you access. I expected that answer. My wife recently died. My daughter removed almost everything from her bedroom without telling me. I believe those belongings may be here. The man's expression softened slightly. What was your wife's name? Morel. He looked at his computer. After a few seconds, he looked back at me. There is an emergency contact on one of the accounts. Who? You. My heart skipped. Can you tell me the unit number? He hesitated. I shouldn't. I understand. I reached into my wallet and showed him a photograph of Morel. The man looked at it for several seconds. Then he sighed. Unit 214. He handed me a visitor badge. My name is Calderon. Stay in the main corridor. I'll meet you there. I followed him through a narrow hallway. Unit 214 was at the end. A heavy padlock hung from the door. Calder entered a code. The door opened. I expected to see boxes. Instead, the unit was almost empty. There were only 3 cardboard cartons, a broken lamp, and a folded blanket. I stared at Calder. This isn't everything.
No.
Then why is this unit registered to Vesper? Calder checked his tablet. She rented another one. Which one? 219. My pulse increased. Open it. He shook his head. I need authorization. Then call my daughter. I already tried. When? This morning. What did she say? She told me nobody was allowed inside. I looked at Unit 219. Then why did she use my phone number as the emergency contact? Calder didn't answer. He simply walked toward the security office. Wait here. I followed him. He brought up the camera recordings. The screen showed Vesper arriving 3 nights earlier. She parked near Unit 219. She carried no boxes. She entered the unit alone. 11 minutes later, She came out carrying a small suitcase. Then a white delivery truck entered the facility. 2 men unloaded 6 wooden crates. They took them directly into Unit 219. I stared at the screen. Who were those men? I don't know. Can you identify the truck? Calder enlarged the image. The license plate was visible. He wrote the number down. That's enough for the police, he said. I looked at him. I don't want the police yet. Why not? Because I don't know what my daughter is involved in. We returned to Unit 219. Calder opened it. The room was empty. Completely empty. No crates. No boxes. Nothing. Except for a broken wooden frame lying against the wall. I picked it up. I recognized it immediately. Morel had owned a painting with that frame. It had hung above her desk for years. I turned the frame over. A small metal plate was attached to the back. M17. I remembered Morel's habit of labeling everything. M stood for her name. 17 probably meant the year. I searched the frame carefully. One corner felt loose. I pressed it. A thin metal strip slid out. Words had been engraved into it. Ask who benefited after the fire. I read it twice. Calder looked over my shoulder. What fire? I don't know.
But I did remember something.
A warehouse fire in 2018. I had heard Morel discussing it once. At the time, I had assumed it was another insurance matter. I pulled out my phone and searched old news reports. There it was. A warehouse owned by Veilhart Contemporary Holdings had burned in 2018. The fire destroyed several valuable paintings. The insurance payout had been enormous. I stared at the company name. Veilhart Contemporary Holdings. My daughter's company. I called Vesper. She answered after several rings.
Dad.
Where are you?
Why?
I found the frame. Silence. You went to Northbridge. Yes. You weren't supposed to. Who owns Veilhart Contemporary Holdings? Another silence. You know the answer. I want to hear it from you. I started it. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't what you think. What happened in 2018? She began breathing heavily. Dad, listen to me. Mom didn't want you involved. She left clues. I know. You knew? Yes. Then tell me the truth. I can't. Why? Because if I tell you, they will know you have the evidence. My blood ran cold. Who are they? Vesper whispered a name. Lucien. The call ended. I looked at Calder. He had heard the name. Do you know him? Calder's face changed. Yes.
How?
He rented Unit 219 before your daughter. I stared at him. What? Calder looked toward the empty corridor. Mr. Veilhart, your daughter wasn't the first person searching for your wife's things. Before I could ask another question, my phone received a message from an unknown number. It contained a photograph of Morel in her hospital room. She was sitting in bed, looking directly at the camera. Beside her stood Vesper. The message underneath contained only 6 words. Your wife knew who started the fire. I looked at the photograph again. Then I noticed something I had missed. Morel was holding a small envelope, and written across it was my name. I did not sleep that night. The photograph of Morel stayed on my phone screen until the battery died. She was sitting in the hospital bed, thinner than I remembered, but her eyes were clear. She was holding an envelope with my name on it. I kept asking myself the same question. Why had she never given it to me? The next morning, I returned to Bellwether House. Tamsin was already waiting in her office. You found the message, she said. I stopped. How did you know? Because I received one too. She turned her computer toward me. An unknown number had sent her the same photograph. But there was one difference. Her photograph showed the envelope more clearly. I zoomed in. There was a second line beneath my name. Open this only when Vesper tells you the truth. I stared at it. Morel wrote this? Yes. Then why didn't she tell me herself? Maybe she was afraid she wouldn't have enough time. That answer hurt. My wife had known she was dying. She had known something was wrong. And I had been sitting beside her hospital bed talking about ordinary things. The weather, dinner, the garden, bills. I had never asked the right questions. Tamsin opened a drawer and removed a sealed envelope. This was delivered to me 2 days before Morel died. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Morel's. You kept it. She told me not to open it unless something happened to her. I looked at the envelope. What was inside? I don't know. Then open it. Tamsin shook her head. She said you had to be here. I took a breath. Then open it. She carefully broke the seal. Inside were several copies of documents. The first was a bank transfer. The second was an insurance invoice. The third was a property access report. I recognized the address. Our house. I looked at the date. Someone had entered our home 2 weeks before Morel died. The visitor was listed as Lucien Marr. My hands became cold. Why would Lucien come to our house? Tamsin pointed to another document. He wasn't looking for money. What was he looking for? Records. I remembered the bedroom, the notebooks, the receipts, the old envelopes, everything Vesper had removed. Suddenly her behavior made sense. But another question remained. Why did Vesper pretend she had thrown everything away? Because she wanted Lucien to believe the evidence was gone. I sat down. I had spent days believing my daughter had destroyed her mother's memory. Instead, she had been hiding it. Tamsin reached for another document. This is where things become complicated. She showed me a company registration. Vale Hart Contemporary Holdings. Vesper's company. But beneath the ownership details was another name. Lucien Marr. I stared at it. He owned part of my daughter's company? Not officially. Then why is his name here? Because the original registration was altered. I felt anger rising again. Who altered it? Morel never proved that. I looked at the documents again. Then I noticed something strange. One page had a handwritten note. Morel had written. Vesper did not know. I looked at Tamsin. She wrote that. Yes. Then my daughter wasn't involved? Not knowingly. I closed my eyes. For years, I had believed Vesper's success came from business talent. Now I wondered whether her entire career had been built around a lie she didn't understand. Then my phone rang. It was Vesper. I answered. Dad. Come to Bellwether House. No. Your mother left something for us. I know. You knew about the documents? Yes. Then come here. There was silence. Finally, she said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. 27 minutes later, Vesper entered the office. She looked exhausted. She sat opposite me. I placed the photograph on the desk. Tell me everything. She stared at it. Then she began crying. I didn't know the paintings were fake. I said nothing. Lucien hired me in 2016. He told me he represented private collectors. I was young. I thought I had found a serious opportunity. You signed the documents. Yes. You moved the paintings. Yes. Did you know they were stolen? No. Did you know about the warehouse? No. Then why did you hide everything? Because Lucien threatened me. With what? He said he would make it look like I had planned the entire operation. I looked at my daughter. Why didn't you tell me? She wiped her face. Because Mom told me not to. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. She knew. She discovered the fraud before I did. Vesper reached into her coat and placed a small key on the table. This opens the last box. What box? The one Mom told me never to open unless Lucien came back. Tamsin looked at the key. Where is it? Vesper answered quietly. In the hospital where Mom died. I stared at her. What is inside? Vesper shook her head. I don't know. Then the office door opened. A police officer stood outside. Mr. Vale Hart? Yes. We need you to come with us. My heart stopped. Why? The officer looked at Vesper. Lucien Marr was arrested at the airport this morning. I stood up. And he asked for you by name. The officer handed me a piece of paper. There was one sentence written across it. Morel left you the wrong envelope. I looked at Vesper. She went pale. For the first time, I realized that even after all the evidence we had found, we still did not know the whole truth. I followed the police officer to the station with Vesper beside me. Neither of us spoke during the drive. I kept thinking about the sentence Lucien had written. Morel left you the wrong envelope. It made no sense. Tamsin had given us the envelope herself. Morel's handwriting was on it. Unless there had been another envelope. When we arrived, an officer led us into a small interview room. Lucien Marr was already there. He looked calm.
Too calm.
He wore a dark suit and expensive shoes, as if he were waiting for a business meeting rather than questioning. He looked at me and smiled. You must be Orson. I sat across from him. How did you know my name? Morel talked about you. My hands tightened. You knew my wife. Not well. You entered my house. I searched your house. For what? Documents. Why? Because Morel had something that belonged to me. I leaned forward. Nothing belonged to you. Lucien smiled again. That is where you're wrong. The officer placed a recording device on the table. Mr. Marr, explain your connection to Veilhart Contemporary Holdings. Lucien looked at Vesper. Then he looked at me. Your daughter was useful. Vesper flinched. I stood up. Don't talk about her like that. Lucien did not react. She was young, ambitious, and eager to enter the art business. I gave her opportunities. You used her. Yes. His honesty made me angrier than denial would have. What happened to the paintings? They were replaced. By whom? People who worked for me. And the warehouse fire? Lucien leaned back. I didn't start it. I stared at him. Then who did? He smiled. Morel. The room became silent. I felt as if someone had struck me. You're lying. Am I? My wife would never burn a warehouse. She didn't burn it. Then what do you mean? She knew it was going to happen. Vesper suddenly spoke. Stop. Lucien looked at her. Your mother knew the warehouse contained evidence. She knew someone wanted it destroyed. Who? I demanded. Lucien turned toward me. That is what she never told you. The officer stopped the recording. What evidence? Lucien shrugged. The original ownership records. I remembered the metal strip. Ask who benefited after the fire. Who received the insurance money? I asked. Several people. Name them. Lucien smiled. Your daughter. Vesper closed her eyes. I turned toward her. Is that true? Yes. My chest tightened. But I didn't know where it came from. Lucien laughed quietly. You believed that? Vesper looked at me. I found out years later. Then why didn't you return it? Because by then, Lucien had evidence against me. What evidence? The contracts I signed. She began crying. I was terrified. I looked back at Lucien. You threatened my daughter. I protected my investment. You ruined her life.
No.
She ruined her own life by trusting people. The officer ended the interview. As Lucien was taken away, he stopped beside me. One more thing, Orson. I turned. The envelope Morel gave Tamsin wasn't the evidence. Then what was it? A map. I froze. What map? Lucien smiled. The location of the real records. Then he walked away. Vesper and I returned to Bellwether House that evening. Tamsin was waiting. I told her everything. When I mentioned the map, she looked confused. Morel never gave me a map. Then what did she give you? Financial records. I opened the envelope again. We spread every page across the desk. For nearly an hour, we found nothing. Then Vesper noticed something. Dad. She pointed at the bank statement. Look at the transaction numbers. I leaned closer. The numbers seemed ordinary, but the final 4 digits repeated across several documents. That's not a bank code, Vesper whispered. What is it? Coordinates. Tamsin immediately opened an old property map. We entered the numbers. The location appeared on the screen. It was an abandoned restoration workshop outside Bellwether, a place I had visited only once. Morel used to take me there when we were newly married. I remembered the building. I remembered the locked basement. And suddenly, another memory returned. Morel had once told me, if I ever disappear, don't look for me. Look beneath the floor. I had thought she was joking. Now I knew she wasn't. We drove there before sunrise. The workshop stood behind a rusted metal gate. Vesper found the key Morel had given her. It opened the basement door. Inside was a narrow room. There were no paintings, no money, no jewelry, only dozens of sealed folders arranged on wooden shelves. Each folder contained names, dates, payments, and photographs. Tamsin opened the first one. Her face changed. This is everything. I looked at the shelves. Lucien's entire operation was there. But then I saw a folder with my name on it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from Morel. The first line made my hands shake. Orson, if you are reading this, Vesper has finally stopped protecting me. I looked at my daughter. She was crying. I continued reading. And what Morel had written next changed everything I believed about the final weeks of her life. The first sentence of Morel's letter stayed in my mind long after I finished reading it. Orson, if you are reading this, Vesper has finally stopped protecting me. I looked at my daughter. What does that mean? Vesper wiped her face. I don't know. I continued reading. Morel had written the letter only days before her death. She explained that she had discovered the entire fraud years earlier, but she had not immediately exposed Lucien because she realized Vesper had been manipulated. She trusted the wrong people, Morel wrote. But trusting them is not the same as choosing to become one of them. I stopped reading. Vesper lowered her head. My anger had not disappeared, but it had changed. For months, I had believed my daughter had betrayed her mother. Now I understood that she had been carrying fear, guilt, and shame while pretending everything was under control. The letter continued. Lucien believes the evidence is hidden in the places he already searched. He is wrong. I divided everything into ordinary records and placed them where nobody would think to look. Tamsin examined the folders around us. That explains the receipts, she said. I nodded. Morel had never collected useless papers. She had preserved evidence. The insurance invoices, the shipping records, the restoration bills, the bank statements, each one connected to another. Together, they proved that Lucien had organized the fraudulent sales and manipulated Vesper's company. But then I reached the final page. Morel had written one sentence in larger letters. Do not destroy Vesper to punish Lucien. I looked at my daughter. She was standing beside the shelves, completely silent. You knew about this? She shook her head.
No.
Then why did you empty your mother's room? She finally looked at me. Because Lucien came to the house. I remembered the property access report. He came before Mom died? Yes. Did he threaten you? He told me he knew Mom had hidden something. What did you do? I moved everything. Why didn't you tell me? Because Mom told me that if Lucien ever came back, I had to make him believe the evidence was gone. I sat down on the basement floor. For weeks, I had thought my daughter had destroyed the room out of selfishness. She had actually been trying to protect the evidence. But there was still something I could not forgive. You lied to me. Yes. You let me believe you didn't care about her. I know. Do you understand what that did to me? Vesper began crying. Yes. I wanted to tell her that everything was forgiven. I couldn't. Not yet. Forgiveness is not a sentence. It is something that has to be earned. The police arrived that afternoon. Tamsin handed them the folders. The investigation lasted for months. Lucien's accounts were frozen. Several collectors received their money back. The insurance company reopened the old warehouse case. The evidence from Morel's records connected Lucien to multiple fraudulent transactions. More importantly, it proved Vesper had not knowingly participated in the scheme. She still faced consequences. She lost her company. She had to repay money she had received from transactions she should have questioned. She also testified against Lucien. He was eventually convicted. When the case ended, I returned home alone. Morel's bedroom was still empty. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I realized I didn't need to put everything back. I kept her blue cardigan, her glasses, 3 photographs, the wooden frame, and the small box of receipts. I left the rest behind. Not because those things were worthless, because Morel's life was bigger than objects. A week later, Vesper came to visit. She carried a small package. I found this in the storage unit. She handed it to me. Inside was Morel's old wooden box, the same box I had believed was gone forever. I opened it. There were receipts, photographs, notes, and one final message. Vesper watched me read it. Mom wrote that. Yes. What does it say? I looked at my daughter. It says, "Don't let fear turn my daughter into someone she isn't." Vesper began to cry. I put the note down. Then I hugged her. It was not a perfect reconciliation. It was not a magical ending. There were still things we needed to discuss. There were wounds that would take time. But we were finally telling each other the truth. Months later, Lucien went to prison. Vesper started over. She found work restoring damaged books and old documents. She told me she wanted a life where every signature meant exactly what it said. I kept Morel's bedroom mostly empty. Sometimes I still walked inside and expected to hear her voice. I never did, but I stopped feeling that the room was accusing me. It was simply a room. My memories of her were elsewhere. In the kitchen where she burned toast every Sunday. In the garden where she argued with me about roses. In the car where she sang badly and never admitted it. And in the little wooden box she had kept for years. I once believed my daughter had thrown away my wife's life. Now I know she had only moved the objects. The truth was what mattered. Lucien lost everything he had built through deception. Vesper lost the company she had built on a foundation she never understood. And I lost the version of my daughter I thought I knew, but I gained something more important, the truth. And eventually, I gained my daughter back. Not the daughter who lied. Not the daughter who was afraid. The daughter who finally chose to stop hiding. That was Morel's final lesson. Some things should be kept, not because they are valuable, but because they tell the truth. And sometimes, the strongest form of justice is not revenge. It is forcing a person who built a life on lies to live without them. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more emotional family stories, unexpected twists, and endings where the truth finally catches up with those who deserve it.